Joining me is Malcolm Davis, an expert on China's militarisation. He's from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Malcolm, thank you so much for your time. It seems to me China's wolf warrior diplomacy that was put in the fridge, I think, a year or so ago, is back again. What do you make of its aggressive tweet to the US that it is ready for war and ready to fight to the end?
Look, I think your summary was quite good in the sense that China senses weakness in the Trump administration. Trump is trying to portray it as strength, but it's anything but. Trump is engaging in a strategy of complete capitulation to Moscow, essentially not only throwing Ukraine to the wolves, but also turning its back on Europe and Europe's security and turning its back on NATO. And China and Xi Jinping are watching all this. They're watching how Trump is behaving. They're watching how it's betraying its US allies, how it's aligning with Putin. And I think the Chinese sense weakness in Trump. So they're probably ratcheting up their aggressive rhetoric. And I think this is likely to be followed by a ratcheting up of aggressive behaviour, probably in areas around the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. So Trump's strategy is failing miserably.
Well, no one actually knows, right, Malcolm, what's going through Trump's mind. But there's a strong theory that maybe he's trying to peel Russia away from China, from its alliance with China. Maybe he also just simply wants Ukraine finished at whatever cost to clear the decks for exactly this potential war with China that a lot of people have said is maybe only a few years away. Does any of that justify what's going on? Do you give credence to this?
Well, the first theory is what's known as the reverse Kissinger, basically a link back to the Cold War when Henry Kissinger detached the Soviet Union from China, or the vice versa, in fact. But that was a very different period when China and the Soviet Union were enemies, they were adversaries, they were fighting each other in military conflicts. The situation now is completely different. And if Trump and the Trump administration think that they're going to somehow detach Russia and detach Putin from this no limits partnership with China, they're deluding themselves. I think that both China and Russia are working together to undermine US power around the world. And they see opportunity as a result of Trump's weakness. Your second theory in terms of is Trump preparing the decks for a major war with China, I mean, that's a possibility, but the price we're going to pay using his strategy of abandoning Ukraine, appeasing Russia in the same way that France and Britain appeased Nazi Germany in Munich in 1938, and essentially turning the US back on NATO and destroying the NATO alliance is too high a price to pay. We should be able to assure the security of our allies, protect Ukraine, and stand up to China at the same time.
The analogy is perfect. You remember, of course, Britain and other powers bullying Czechoslovakia into giving up the Sudetenland, part of its own land, in exchange for peace. In fact, the rest of Czechoslovakia was, or the Czech Republic or whatever it was then swallowed up by the Nazis anyway. Malcolm, we have already seen what looks like China preparing for war. It's had ships cut 2 underwater data cables in Europe, in the Baltic, last November. It's cut cables between Taiwan's main island and a small one that was just recently, an accident, China claims. We've also had Chinese ships off our coast last month firing guns to scare us, and other Chinese ships doing live fire exercises over Vietnam just 2 weeks ago to show it was unhappy with a change to their border, and doing yet another live fire drill just last week off Taiwan, which it wants to take over. I mean, it's just an extraordinary picture. What are you getting from this?
Oh, look, I think you're right. I think that the Chinese are preparing for war. The government of Xi Jinping has made it crystal clear in explicit terms that they intend to impose unification on Taiwan against the wishes of the Taiwanese people. And they'll do it with military force. The only issue of uncertainty is the timing of when this attack will happen. There's some suggestion that 2027 is a year that's constantly talked about because that's when Xi Jinping told the PLA that it must be ready to carry out the attack across the Taiwan Straits in 2027. Others have a different perspective on the timing, but I think what is clear is that the Chinese understand that there's going to be no peaceful unification because Taiwan does not want to end up like Tibet or Xinjiang or Hong Kong. So what you will see is a China that uses military force, that invades Taiwan. The only uncertainty now is whether the Trump administration will defend and support Taiwan, because I think what the Chinese are getting out of Trump's policy towards Ukraine is that if Trump is prepared to do a deal with Putin in the same way that the Sudetenland and Munich in 1938 ended up in peace in our time, then the Chinese will try to do a deal with Trump over Taiwan to get him to walk away from Taiwan in return for some fake reward from China. And if that happens, then China would grab Taiwan. Rare earths, exactly.
I know, Malcolm. And I have to say, Andrew Hastie, I respect him a lot, the opposition's defence spokesman, but for him to suggest in a conference, I think it was today, that we should show Donald Trump our goodwill by offering him rare earths is absolutely shocking bargaining. Andrew, you're giving in before Trump's actually asked for anything. Malcolm Davis, thank you so much indeed for your time.